So we broke up before that split even came out, which made Jay Turon very upset, and I see why. So we didn't even support it, we kind of just like sunk our own ship.
Welcome, everyone, to This Was The Scene, the podcast that takes a look back at the late 90s, early 2000 punk scene. I am your host, Mike Doyle. Before we start, I'm trying to sell my Avail ticket, which is for their show in Richmond tomorrow at Browns Island. It's only $45, so you can email thiswasthescene@gmail.com or message me on Instagram, which is just thiswasthescene, if you'd like to buy it. Nowhere Fast were a pop-punk band from New Jersey. You may remember them from their 2 songs that were on the Pinball Records comp, and their split with the LWL. You may also remember their cover of Crowded House's Don't Dream It's Over on the Making Decisions About Punk compilation. They had a short lifespan, and 2 of their members, Heath and Tyler, went on to join Gabe Saporta's brainchild, Midtown. And we talk about this at the end of the interview, which is quite entertaining. This is like part 2 of the 3 episodes I have in a row that just kind of accidentally happened that were all focused on these Jersey bands from the late 90s. So there are a lot of Jersey references, but it's still a fun interview, and I'm sure a lot of you will absolutely love it just because I said so. Side note, the band I'm trying to think of later on in the interview, who I don't remember their name, is this band called Man Dingo from Chicago. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about as soon as you get to this part of the interview. I've had many people ask for this interview, so luckily I got in touch with Ryan, and this is what we chat about. His new book out that's called Nimrod, The Bound Brook Flood, Jay Turon, Matt Haick, Bigwig, the Heathcliff cover, breaking up before the split with LWL, Heath and Tyler going off to be in Midtown, Gabe Saporta, Ben from Dillinger Escape Plan managing Merciana, being the light guy for one of the Dillinger Escape Plan's tours, and a ton more. As I said earlier, go check out his book called Nimrod. It's on his website, the90sguy.com, or you can even look up Nimrod and put Ryan Roberts if you're doing an Amazon search or something like that, or a Google search, and it should show up. If you live in New Jersey and have a dog and you want it to be walked, you should go hire his Dog Days NJ dog walking company. Apparently on their website, they also can care for your dog, cat, bird, turtle, ferret, etc. when you're on an extended vacation or simply a day trip here and there. So go check that out again, dogdaysnj.com. But I think he really just wants me to tell you about his book, Nimrod, so you should go check that out as well. Lastly, if you're a tech company looking to explain what you do in 60 seconds, you should hire me and my animation company. It's called Drive80. It's drive80.com, drive80.com. Do explainer animations, Instagram stickers, and logo animations. I'm working for myself for 11 years, and that also helps to go to support the podcast. So if you want to hire me or pass my information along to a company that needs an explainer animation, then that would be fucking swell. That's all I got to say, so feel free to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with anyone who would love some punk rock nostalgia. With that said, let's get started. Before we start, so you told me about this book you did, so I was like, we'll mention that in the beginning and we can talk about it at the end again. So what is this whole thing?
Yes, so I wrote a novel and it just got published.
You gotta give the people a little bit more, man.
Okay. It's a coming of age story. So it's about teenagers. It's about learning to live for oneself. A big part of it's discovering the power of music. And then there's also a part of it that's like the excitement of young love and friendship. It's about a sheltered teenager named Rod who believes his place in the world is he was born as a replacement child. His only role is to serve as caretaker to his emotionally fragile mom. He believes that Sting, the rock star, is his guardian angel, and he's the only one who could fix Rod's broken family. And then the punk rock aspect of it is his mother blames Green Day for killing his brother, who was born and died long before Rod. And so Rod believes that Green Day is the black cloud hanging over his head and sabotaging every move since before he was even born.
How much of the writing aspect, or how long have you been a writer, I guess is the question.
Well, I guess it's pretty new for me in terms of like writing. This is my first novel, my first attempt at a novel or anything. It's always been a hobby, but I kind of put it on the back burner because I wanted to be in a band. I wanted to be a touring band dude. So I wrote a little bit along the way. I did like zines here and there and things like that. But really, after the dream of being in a band finally died, I puttered around. I did another zine called Pins and Needles, which turned into like web zines and websites and stuff. And then finally, I got to a place where I just started to try to write a novel, and it worked.
I've talked about this in like a bunch of interviews where people had started off in a band and then that wasn't the thing that they eventually did some creative outlet completely differently later on in life because they just didn't want to give up, but the band thing really wasn't the outlet. So like for you, by doing this book and writing, has that become your like quote unquote band?
Yeah, absolutely. Not playing in band, it did leave a hole, but that hole was filled by like getting married and doing the family thing, having a kid and stuff like that. But there was always that need to be creative. So this is really the best thing for me because being in a band at this age is hard too, trying to get everyone together and stuff like that. So writing is a solitary thing. I could do it when my day is over. And yeah, it has definitely filled that creative hole.
Do you like that you don't have to collaborate with other members to get your idea out there?
As far as what, like getting it published?
Like say you have the main idea and other people want to kind of fill in the gaps or say, oh, let's change this. And either you're all about that when you're in a band or you're like, nope, this is what I do. Don't touch it. Let's get the fuck away from it. Yeah.
Well, I liked it because I was never the main songwriter. Matt from Nowhere Fast, Matt Haick, he and I were in many bands together. And he's just an amazing songwriter. So he always brought the songs, and then I was the guy there to help arrange them and to add my parts. So really, I hope he didn't mind it. I love that. That's one of the main things I miss about being in a band is like the camaraderie, the band practice and stuff like that, and like converging on ideas. But yeah, because I wasn't a songwriter, I didn't get my feelings hurt too much by like someone not liking it.
Okay, so let's kind of go back in time and talk about the band. And this is going to be very New Jersey scene focused because this is where we basically like that's where the band started and ended, correct?
Absolutely, yeah.
Let's talk about the fucking Jersey scene, man. Let's go back to how you got involved in the scene to begin with.
I got into the scene. So back in 7th grade, 1994, the year that punk broke, Nimrod or Green Day like changed my life. I heard Green Day. I was 13 years old, and like everything else stopped. Then I got into other bands like Rancid and Bad Religion and that kind of stuff. And then eventually that led to the hardcore scene. A friend of a brother's played me Vision of Disorder's demo, and then my world changed again. So really, I entered into the local scene through hardcore. So I did that for a while, and I just loved everything about that, hardcore and emo and all that stuff. So I wasn't into the punk rock scene until a friend of mine introduced me to Matt Haick again. He was playing in a band not Nowhere Fast. This was his side project where he was singing and playing guitar. And I was told it was an emo band, and that was like right up my alley because I was listening to Texas is the Reason, Falling Forward, all that stuff. So I joined his band, and then we started playing and stuff. And then Nowhere Fast was already going, and they were already playing shows, and they had a demo, and they needed a bassist. So I just slid right into there, and then I started to learn about all the punk bands.
What about emo and hardcore? What'd you like about that better than just like regular punk rock?
I guess it was probably the power and the urgency. I guess when I first heard Green Day, I never heard anything like that. Like it's fast and bratty and snotty and sarcastic. So that really spoke to me at 13 and 14. And then I guess the hormones were raging or whatever. I wasn't an angry kid or violent or anything, but just hearing that dude from VOD screaming his brains out, I was just like, wow, this is crazy. And it just grabbed me. And then especially like even now, I just liked what the hardcore scene was about. I had never even been to a concert before. So going to a hardcore show and just seeing like tables filled with records or I guess demos and 7-inches and pamphlets, it was another world. And I just like fully immersed myself.
Were you a straight edge kid?
I was not. I showed up at my first show with my brother's friend who showed me that demo. And I was smoking cigarettes back then, probably like 15. I left that day straight edge, but it only lasted a couple months. It never took.
Even as I said that, I don't think I've ever stopped to think about we were all probably in between the ages of 15 to 18. I mean, being straight edge really wasn't that fucking hard. Like, you couldn't even buy shit. And all you could really do was smoke cigarettes. It's not like we could go to the liquor store and buy shit. So it's just, I never thought about like how funny that was that kids were like, yeah, I'm fucking straight edge. It's like, you can't buy anything.
It's a great point. Yeah. You should be straight edge. Yeah, it'd be hard at 21 and after, for sure. Yeah.
I think I didn't really get into drinking. I mean, I always looked super young, but like, we didn't really have any friends that could buy us liquor until I did like the band, and my drummer was older than us, and we were like, oh fuck yeah, let's go.
Well, how old were you then?
I mean, I was like, I was 17 because I remember I started driving. I got my license and I drove to my first show that I played as Congress a Cow. And I remember driving there and my exhaust pipe like detached from the bottom of my Volvo as I went over train tracks. So like I had never been to a show prior to that because I couldn't get there. So like from but 17 on until I was, until now. I mean, well, I don't really go to shows like local shows now, but yeah, I was 17. What about you?
Wait, you had never been to a show, or you had never driven yourself to a show?
I had not been to a show.
So the first show you ever went to, you were playing?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was just kind of like that was the entry point. It was just like, hey, we're playing a show. I was like, what does that mean? And then and then we show up. I was like, what's a Legion Hall? Or I was like, I know what a Legion Hall is. I was like, I didn't know, wait, kids are in here and not old veterans that are like
Right.
mad and drinking.
That's awesome. I wonder how many people have that experience where they played the first show they ever went to. That's pretty awesome.
That's why I always ask people, I'm like, what got you involved in the scene? Was it you being in a band and playing your first show, or did you go to a show and then join a band? And it's been a little bit of a mix. I think it's more so been people have went to a show and then they're like, oh, now I want to play like be in a band.
That was me. I was a fan all the way.
What did you like about it though? Like, what did you see for yourself when you witnessed that?
Not to sound too cliche, but I liked how it was a whole different world. I wasn't like a dork in high school or anything like that. I probably wanted to alienate myself really, because like I was listening to Green Day and I was like, yeah, I feel this way too. I wasn't totally connecting with people, but I wasn't like a friendless kid. And then just to show up, my first show was at Middlesex County College, so it was a huge place. And I just liked that there was like people out there I'd never seen any people like that in my high school. All the T-shirts they were wearing, and I mean the '90s hardcore style was very distinct, I guess. So it's not a great style now; it doesn't hold up, but I just loved it. I loved the baggy pants and like the headbands, and I was like, "Who are these people?" And like how did everyone show up here? How did everyone know about this?
I feel like the headbands were a very distinguishing feature if you were a hardcore kid.
Oh, for sure. And you cut the sleeve off your T-shirt and stuck that on your head. Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah.
I did it. I looked so stupid.
Really? That was your style?
No, I tried it because everyone, like all the bands I liked were doing it. So like I cut off my mom's like, what are you doing? And I cut off the sleeve, put it on my head. I looked so dumb, but I went to like 2 shows like that until I was like, no, I can't do it.
Yeah, there was only like a handful of people who could pull it off. And the ones that did pull it off, you're like, that person kicked my ass.
Totally. They looked so cool. And then like I tried it. I was like, yeah, I can't do it. Yeah.
What town did you grow up in?
I grew up in a town called Branchburg. Do you know that town?
No, where's that?
All right. So it's the towns around us that you would know are Somerville, Hillsborough, Bridgewater. You know that area?
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, we didn't even have a high school in Branchburg. So I went to Somerville High School, which is where Heath went from Nowhere Fast than Midtown.
You were closer to Bound Brook and the Palace and all that?
Yeah, very close. Yep. The Palace was huge for us.
Were you living there? This is all jumping around, but were you living in that area when that huge Bound Brook flood happened?
Yes, I was still in Branchburg at my parents' house. Yep.
What was that about? Was it just because I know the Palace was it was on the 3rd floor, but the streets were flooded like to the 2nd story or first?
Yeah, it was crazy. I was visiting a friend at college. He was out in York, Pennsylvania, and we were watching the news and we're like, oh my God, Bound Brook is underwater. We couldn't believe it, but it didn't. It was just one of those isolated things. It didn't get to Branchburg. We were like 2 towns over. It didn't affect us at all.
Yeah, it fucked up Bound Brook big time.
Big time, yeah. And that place was already like not, wealthy or anything, so it really set them back.
I think that's usually what happens is the really non-wealthy areas, even if they're in a nice town, the non-wealthy are at the bottom of the flood zone. So that's why it's so much cheaper to live there.
Yep. And then they just get hit and hit. Yeah. It's a cycle. It sucks.
Yeah. I think it was a storm that just stopped and just flooded because that happened up in Jefferson too.
That same storm or a different one?
I think it was a different storm, but it was very similar, something like that. I mean, I don't know. I think the majority of people listening are from Jersey, so they'll be like it was fucking hurricane, whatever.
Right. It's hard to keep up with all the names and stuff,
Yeah. So you grew up there, and then where was your first show at? It was at Middlesex.
First show was at Middlesex County College.
Mm-hmm. So you went there with your brother, you said?
Yeah, my brother's friend, who was from like a couple towns over, he just like reappeared in my brother's life, and he was playing in a hardcore band. And like I said, I was into punk, I was into Green Day and all Epitaph Records bands and stuff. Then he started showing me like his band, local hardcore bands. So it's just a whole different world. So I remember he would take me he didn't have a car, so my brother would drive us both to like, it was Sound on Sound record store in Highland Park.
I have no idea.
And then Curmudgeon. Yeah, and we saw a flyer, and he's like, I think you're ready. Let's go. So my brother dropped us off. He didn't come in. He just dropped us off at the show, and we went. And it was wild, man. It was like a festival with all these bands playing. I thought that's how all shows were, but it was crazy.
So you go to the show, and then you join up with Matt. So what was, and Nowhere Fast was already together. So weren't Tyler and Heath in Nowhere Fast?
Yeah, Heath joined later after me. So at the time, Matt and Tyler, they're both from Bridgewater, one town over. They're like one grade ahead of me, but about my age, you know. And they had two different bass players. In their first demo, which is on the NJPP archives, it was Rob Muscatello from eventually LWL.
I feel like everybody was in your fucking band. Like, everyone's like, oh,
they had two bass players before me, Rob, and then this guy Brian, who was pretty short lived, and then me, and then we were kind of the solid lineup. Then we brought Heath in later.
Because I feel like everybody I talked to, like, oh yeah, when I was in Nowhere Fast, I'm like, how many fucking people were in this band?
Well, you did. I mean, you had Rob on, right? Was Rob on your show?
Hit?
No, Rob Muscatello.
No, he basically, like, he never wanted to come on, but he always texts me, and then once this thing started, he's the one who introduced me to Popeye, and then Jeff from Game Face.
Okay, and Sergey, is it Sergey or Serge from Sam I Am?
Sergey.
Yeah, I remember he came up in that episode, and then he was like sponsoring it with the company he was working for. So yeah, he's all over the podcast without being on it.
Yeah, he basically was on it with just like being mentioned, but he's like, I don't really know. I'm like, come on, man, I'd love to have you come on and talk about your perspective, because he's
so funny and like personable too. Yeah, he'd be perfect. So.
Yeah. So they were already playing local shows, or were they just playing in like Matt's basement? And
No, they were actually playing local shows. They had that demo out. They played that show that's been talked about on yours before with Less Than Jake and Weston at the Mandeville Elks. That was like Benny Horowitz. He did that show. So I was friends with Benny because he was in the hardcore scene and doing shows and stuff. I think I wasn't in the band at that point, but I was already in a band with Matt. But yeah, I went to see him at that show, and I was like, wow, they're like a real band. You know, like the band I was doing with Matt, we were practicing. I was just learning and stuff. But like to me, Nowhere Fast, I was like, wow, they have a demo out, So
Yeah.
When I like weaseled my way into that band, it felt awesome. And that's kind of how I got reintroduced to punk, because like I loved Green Day. They're the band that got me into everything. By the time Insomniac came out, I like ditched them. They were sellouts to me. If they weren't hardcore and DIY, I was like, I got rid of them. But then getting into Nowhere Fast, I kind of rediscovered punk and like all these new bands, and it just came in like another flood,
I find it so funny, just talking about it for so many times, just how the sellout thing, when you're 16 years old or 17 and you're living at home comfortably, you're like, oh, you want to make money, you pieces of shit.
Right. And like we all discovered bands from these huge bands, like the Sex Pistols and the Clash back then. They were on major labels, like it's... Yeah. I don't know. You just get like that when you're a teenager, and it's fun. And then you're like, I was such an ass.
It was like kind of like today. I was looking at, I follow the Creep Records Instagram, and Eric's posting like he has all these Blink-182 vinyl records, and I'm looking at the pricing. It's like $75, $180. In my mind, I'm like, Jesus Christ. But then I'm thinking they're probably rare finds or something. And someone posted the same thing, like, great finds. It's like, but really pricey, don't you think? It's like, hey, you piece of shit. You don't own the business. And, like, you don't realize that record stores, when they sell newer records, are expensive. Like, they don't really make that much of a margin on it. So, like, right. Even adults are fucking stupid.
Right. Yeah, we're all stupid. Yeah. And why would someone feel the need to like comment that on someone's business? If you think it, okay, but like, why would you make that comment? It's so strange.
I know, like, I thought it, and I wouldn't do that. And then when that person wrote that, I wanted to comment and be like, you stupid fuck. Like, I'm like, no. I'm like, I'll just talk shit on my podcast if I think about it.
Perfect. Yeah.
it'll be hidden in some like little corner.
Smart move.
So your first show with the band, what do you remember it?
I do remember it. I don't remember what the place was. I was trying to think of it today. It was at a church. I don't know too many places in North Jersey, so they kind of all blend together. But it was with one cool guy. They had done a couple shows there, and it was huge. I mean, maybe that's just me thinking back, but like I remember walking in, and it was huge, and there was a lot of people there, and I was like, oh crap. The one cool guy either headlined or played like second to last. Yeah, and that's where I met those guys. It was awesome.
Were you like super nervous to play, or did you, when you got on stage and started playing, were you comfortable?
Super nervous.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't move around at all. Like I was just like stayed in one spot. Yeah, I was totally freaked out. Because it was like a high stage too, you know, like I'd gone to plenty of shows and there was no stage and stuff like that. This was like a high stage. It's like we were actually like performing and I was like, oh, this feels scary.
I'm trying to think of, there's Bernardsville.
Yeah, it wasn't Bernardsville, that was kind of close. Was there a town called like Millsville or not Milltown, because that's kind of by New Brunswick. I swear there was like a mill in it.
I have no idea. Whoa, actually, wait, hold on. New Providence, American Legion, Nowhere Fast, Elmer's IQ,
Yeah, it wasn't there. I
Joystick.
loved that place.
I don't remember that one. I'm thinking like Ridgewood, they had a church that's been talked about a lot. So did you guys, at this point, you're just playing on the demo?
Yeah, there was a second demo that had come out, I think, at that show. I was helping Matt do the artwork for it because my dad worked in computers. So we were one of the first people that I knew that had a scanner. He just had gotten it from his work. I was like that local guy where people would come over and like make their demos on the computer because we could scan things. So we made this this demo for this, or the cover for the second demo. That was the first show that we like played for that. But that doesn't show up anywhere. I don't see where that demo is. It's not on the archives or anything. It's kind of like forgotten about.
Yeah, because I see the first one is,
It's got a clown on it.
yeah, it's got the clown, and then the first one's Christmas Morning, and then the second one is the split with LWL. Were you in the band still for that?
Oh yeah, yep.
Okay,
I was in
cool.
the band onward until the end. I think we had met Jay Turon before that show, and he had like got us that or like hooked us up with one cool guy. So as soon as we met Jay, like I keep saying this phrase, but a whole other world opened for us because like there were all these bands that like Nowhere Fast before me. They knew Joystick, but they weren't playing with like One Cool Guy, Taxi Cab Samurais, all those bands. We were just like, wow, it was like a whole other thing.
So when you meet Jay, like, did you start hanging out with the whole LWL guys because, or did you already like hang out with them because of Rob?
No, we got Rob. I think Rob had moved away, or he was gone. I don't know what he was doing. Maybe he went off to college or something. So when he came back, I had taken his job, so I was the bass player in Nowhere Fast. So we actually introduced him to LWL when they needed a bass player. So he got an LWL. So it was all kind of connected. So we kind of did him that. I stole his job, so I was like, here, you can go.
Did you guys used to hang out at like the Dunkin' Donuts and shit?
So we had been there a few times, and we definitely hung out with LWL. We bonded with those guys, with like Steve and Ivan. I'd been to the Dunkin' Donuts, but I wasn't like a part of that crew. It was kind of far away from us. Yeah, I remember going there like once or twice, and it was just wild. So many people. There was like a kickball game, and I was like, how does this not get shut down? There's a lot of people here.
That song is like basically kind of like a time capsule in a way.
Yeah, he was documenting that stuff for sure.
So when did you guys do the split with them? Like, what's the order of the Pinball Family comp and then the split with LWL?
I think we did the Pinball Family songs first. I believe so.
Do you know where you recorded them?
Yeah, Portrait.
Everybody.
Yeah, everybody. We were up there early. I don't know who knew a guy. I'm sure it was Jay that hooked us up there. So we met Chris, and it was awesome. That was my first time ever in a recording studio. And it was the one where it was in like his parents' garage.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that was the first one.
It was awesome. So yeah, so we recorded those two songs for the comp, and then later we went and recorded for the split. And then LWL, they didn't have a bass player back then, so I played bass on the LWL songs on that split too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a little fun fact I didn't know about.
Yeah, they didn't. I'm not bitter. Just the fact they didn't credit me in there. They just put Rob as the bass player, but I was like, yeah, I played this song.
Let it be known, everybody.
Yeah.
The truth has finally come out. 25 years later, it was Ryan.
That's what I'm here to say.
Fuck you, Rob. Like you mentioned before that he's the one who wrote the songs. Was he also a guitar player too? Like why was he playing drums and writing songs?
Yeah, that's a great question. He was. So like I said, when I met him, he had this side project. It was like an emo band. We eventually named it 4 Past Midnight. We never put anything out, so no one knows that band. But it was him, a guy from the band Bound. Do you remember Bound, the old hardcore band from Jersey?
First thing I thought about was that movie where what's her face?
Girls?
Yeah, well, that was
Yeah,
like the big thing.
yeah, it was huge for me. Uh, no, this was a band. The singer of Bound went on to sing for Kid Dynamite and for
Oh yeah,
None More
Jason.
Black. Yeah, exactly. They were like local here. That was the first local band that was like my heroes. I was just like, this is awesome. Anyway, Matt was playing in this band and he was playing guitar and singing. So like I knew him as a guitar player and a singer. And then he showed me his band Nowhere Fast. So yeah, he was playing drums in Nowhere Fast. He started as a drummer. And I guess he was self-taught on guitar. I don't know. He just had a knack for songwriting. He was writing all the songs. It's wild.
So how long was he playing drums before he started Nowhere Fast?
I think I asked him this the other day.
You literally asked him this the other day.
Well, yeah, it's a long story. He was at my house. My son plays drums now, and he's 8 years old. So Matt was over. They were like jamming, and I was like, "When did you start?" Like it was a question I never asked him. So literally like 2 weeks ago.
That's crazy.
He started pretty young. He started at like 8, 9, or 10. I just learned it 2 weeks ago, and I already forgot, but I know it's around then.
So he had been playing drums before he played guitar.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, I was gonna say it's like that's a big leap to go from punk guitar, to playing drums and just picking it up that fast.
Yeah, he got a bass in drums, not a bass guitar. He got his foundation in drums and then picked up a guitar. And like I said, I guess he just had a knack for it. Like he taught himself and then he started writing all these songs. And like I was listening to Nowhere Fast songs the past week to kind of like jog memories of this stuff. And they sound young. We were 16 and 17. They're well-written songs. I was like impressed that he's writing those songs at that age.
That's like crazy when you go back and listen to some of the bands from then, and you hear that maybe they're not like you're kind of like, okay, this sounds young, but you can catch where that foundation is, like you said, and it really is a growing point if they kept going with it.
And it's super impressive because now at 41, I'll see teenage kids and like I'm not an old man, like look at these kids, but they look like children. And then if I knew they were like going into their basement and writing these songs that I can't write, and I'm like, wow, that's really impressive, and then that's a pretty cool use of your time, good for you.
Yeah, I was getting coffee today, and there was these two girls in front of me, and the guy behind the counter, and the three of them were so young, and I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, you're getting old, and I have this comic that I do, and I wrote it the other day. I was like, you're getting old when 50 looks young, but I kind of reversed it. I was like, you're getting old when they literally look like they're like 10 years old, and they're 18, 20 years old, something like that. Or like, the one kid behind the counter, I mean, he has to have been 17. I don't know how old you have to be to get a job down here. But I was just like, holy shit. And then to that point, when I talked to Brian from Saves the Day about like Chris Connolly, and he's like, Chris was 15, 16 years old and he's writing these songs. And people to this day, like I was listening to Through Being Cool the other day, like just blasting it in my car as I was driving around. And he was 17, 18, whatever, and he wrote that shit. And it's such a powerful. This shit still works with me. And this is like some 17-year-old kid just hanging out in his car in a parking lot at a fucking Guitar Center or whatever, or Sam Ash, waiting for it to open.
Dude, I had literally the same experience because I listened to that episode of your show because Saves the Day was big for me. I met those guys early because they were playing hardcore shows. But anyway, so I went back and I listened. The one that got me, what was their very first one? Can't Slow Down?
Yeah.
And I'm not that guy. I'm not the guy who's like, I only like their demo and the stuff. But like with Saves the Day, I was super into their demo and their first album. So I went back and listened to it after hearing Brian's interview, and I went, my God, they were 16 or 17 writing these songs that are like, they're still amazing.
Yeah, and they were just like just the structure and the breakdowns, and even when I think back in those days, and I've seen like people post photos, I'm like, wow, we were so young. But in my brain, I remember him just seeing. I knew he was young, but it didn't seem that he was so much younger. When it's almost to the point where I wasn't thinking back then, like, what the fuck would I care about a 16-year-old saying? I was just like, these words are amazing, incredible. It's just going to change. This changes my life, and it kind of did in certain ways. Where just the songs, I was like, I'm going to rip this shit off, and the songs that I write, this is incredible.
Well, there's people like Chris Connolly and Matt is like that too. They just have a knack for writing songs. To be able to do it that young is just impressive.
Is Matt still in a band, or is he writing songs at all?
He's not in a band, but his job is to write songs. He works for a music studio out in New York where like every week he has to write a song.
I feel like people have told me this there's so many names that come like get pop up in these interviews, and I can't remember if someone had mentioned that he does that for a living.
Well, the old joke used to be, and he used to have a job like this, that he writes jingles for a living, right? And he did in the early and mid 2000s. He worked for a different studio where like he wasn't sitting writing jingles like 1-800 Cars for Kids. Yeah, he wasn't like actively trying to write jingles, but he would write songs that would be used in commercials. So everyone just said he wrote jingles. But yeah, now he just like writes like music, not full songs. I don't know how to describe it, but they get used in movies and in commercials. We'll be like watching TV. He's like, oh, that's my song. I'm like, what? Isn't that? That's awesome.
That's
Yeah, it's cool.
crazy.
It is crazy, right? Like I'm like, that song is yours. That's cool.
And that's where you actually make money with music. Being in a band, absolutely not. Writing jingles for Cars for Kids, that's how you make the big bucks, or that's how you make a sustainable living.
And he fell into it.
Did you were you talking to him about that when you guys were hanging out the other day, where the drumming thing? But did you say, hey, I like heard some of the little songs or something, and you could see where his foundation was and how he built off of that to do what he does now?
We didn't talk about it, but like when my son showed an interest in playing drums, like I knew Matt started like that and all that. So I was like, absolutely. We really encouraged it just because of that. It's the perfect foundation for music.
You have the first demo, and then you do the split with, or then you do the comp, the pinball comp. And this is, it's kind of a funny question to ask, but that was such a popular comp. I don't know if you could really remember this, but did you guys get a little bit more attention locally because of that comp?
Locally, yes, I would think so. But just, I mean, it was such a small scene,
Yeah.
like nowhere fast. We never even got out of, we got out of New Jersey. We went and played Connecticut. It was Brett from Joystick, his college. Like we did little stuff like that, but we never went on tour or anything. Yeah, we felt like good about it. Like the songs were well received, but it didn't lead to anything,
When did Heath join the band?
So Heath joined the band before that split. So there was another comp, did a cover of Don't Dream It's Over on there by Crowded House. And it's on the SoundCloud page. It's like How to Make Friends in Punk, something like that. I think it was the dude from the Overdrives did it. Yeah, I remember we met them at like a McDonald's on 78 and they gave us the CDs. That was our first experience of having not a demo, like something that someone else did. And they handed it to us. And dude, that was such a cool day. I still feel like that. And I believe, I could be wrong because I haven't looked at that CD in a while, but that had Newfound Glory on it. And they sounded totally different. We're like, wow, this is amazing. Who are these guys? Yeah, I think they're on there. And there was a band called Milkshed on there. And it was awesome. It made us, it felt really cool. We were like, I was 16 back then. So it felt awesome.
Fuck yeah, that was the coolest shit in the world.
Right?
Yeah. Having your own CD was the pinnacle. But when you got on a comp, you're like, oh my God, we're on with these bands that I know. Like and some of them are bigger outside of the local scene, or if Weston was on it, you'd freak out, or maybe Lifetime was on or some shit like that. Yeah.
Totally. And it made high school cool too, because it's also going back to like walking into that first hardcore show being like, who are these people? What is this world? And then like I'd sit in high school and like not like connecting with these people, and I was like, you don't even know. Like I'm on this comp, like feeling like not like big time, but I'm like, I don't need you people. I got my own world. You know what I mean?
Check it out, ladies.
Yeah, yeah, that didn't work.
Actually, I feel kind of bummed. But like we were in a punk band in our senior year. That's when we did the first one, and it wasn't really that good. And then the second band came later on, where I was in the going to shows more, and we were on comps. Like I never got to feel that cool in high school, where I was like, hey man, I got a CD out, I'm on some comps.
Well, I never got to experience it. I just felt it in my head.
Yeah, exactly. But even in your head, if you're walking around school just being like, these motherfuckers have no idea who I am.
Yeah, that's how I felt. But like they didn't give a shit. They're like, okay, cool.
I mean, but at the same time, when you're like, when someone's like, what do you guys do? What do you do this week? And you're like, oh, I'm playing a show. Like, what? You're playing a show? It's like, yeah, I'm in a band. Play.
That was really cool, and it's something, and that goes back to like turning on Green Day, because like everyone loves Green Day. Although I discovered when everyone did. It goes back to like this is our own. You know what I mean? You don't even know about it. And that's a cool feeling when you're a teenager.
Oh, totally. We were into punk music in high school, and that made us feel cooler than fucking everybody.
Totally.
Because we would dress differently, dress all skater, and no one else was dressing like that because they were doing the preppy jock thing or whatever it was, or like the freaks, like they're all wearing all black because Kurt Cobain died and it was they were stupid. And then we're like walking around wearing our backpacks all the time, having Jinko jeans or just baggy jeans and XL shirts, and I'm like 110 pounds because that didn't make any fucking sense. But there was this coolness that like we felt that we were kind of the cool crowd, and there was very, very few of us, which made it even cooler.
I think that's the beauty of like punk and hardcore and these little subcultures is that, it's like, something they don't, and that's awesome. Like they can't take that. And then it sucks when like people start showing up at these shows and you're like, wait a second, you're not supposed to be here, Like,
yeah, it make you mad.
Happy thing to say, like who am I to, I was just thinking it again. I didn't say it out loud, but I'm like, what are you doing here?
There's actually a name of somebody I can think of, but I don't want to say it just because they're very like I like them as a person, but I remember seeing them. I was like, what is blah 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 doing here? I really want to say it now, but I don't want them to hear it.
Yeah, totally. And then they'd come up and talk to me. I'm like, well, no. This is my world. You know what I mean? Like, I get the feelings. You're a teenager. That's what you do.
I wonder if that attitude though was one of the things that killed that whole scene later on because it became such a popularity contest. Like, I wonder if it almost had, and this is just theorizing, whatever, but I was trying to wonder it's like you really pick parts, like some aspect of history where it starts off in some way and then it just starts to snowball into something else. Like, I wonder if there was that need to be recognized that just kind of turned everything on its head where the bands were like, we're doing this for popularity and to be known by everybody. And then it became like this stupid thing.
It certainly could, or the bands just get to an age where you're like, we can't exist on just these local shows for no money. We have to actually go out and try it.
Well, I mean, there's that aspect, but there's also the attitude that came later on where it was you had to dress a certain way. It became high school again.
That's a great point. It did. Like it was at first it was our escape from high school, and then it's like, wow, this is actually a little clique in itself, and you don't realize it until you either get away from it or get a little older.
Did you guys just play local shows, or did you ever play like Bound or what the hell is it? Birch Hill or fucking Stone Pony or anything like that?
No, Nowhere Fast never played those. We played those later in our next band, Merciana, but no, Nowhere Fast really, like our biggest shows were the Palace, which were big back then. Those were awesome shows. I remember playing there once with Bigwig and I was like, this is everything I ever wanted. This is awesome.
Wait, did they play on the floor at that show?
Oh, I don't know. I don't remember specifically.
There's some show I remember where I've talked this before. I guess like John's strap on his bass broke, or there was just too many people that were close to them because they were on the floor. There was a stage. I think it was the Palace, and John's literally like sitting on his bass cabinet because he couldn't move or something like that. Do you remember that? Do you remember that show?
I don't. I probably was. I don't remember that specifically.
It's such a weird detail to remember, but it's just one of those things that stood out to me.
I was such a fan. That was the band that like just blew me away back then. Just their precision, like they could play, and I was just in awe of that band.
Oh fuck yeah, dude! I mean, John as a bass player made me just want to freak out when I played because he just went.
He was
nuts.
So good, and he wasn't. He's not like much older than us, right? I wonder how old that guy.
I think he's only a couple years older. Yeah, he's not that much older.
Yeah, but they just seemed like Bigwig. I mean, I know they probably toured back then a little, or they were starting to, but they just seemed like levels above.
Oh yeah,
they were like musicians, and like the way he played. And I mean, I would go see them. They opened for I think Blink-182 down at the Stone Pony before they redid it, and I was like, wow, this is like our band. It was like you felt good seeing them up there because you're like, it's a win for everyone.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of like a veil for Richmond.
Totally.
For me as a bass player, I would see who would inspire me either to play better or just actually have energy on stage. And John was my like go-to guy. I was like, I'm gonna just rip him off completely. Did you? And everyone was like trying to find kind of some kind of stage presence back then. Did you have someone that you looked to and you're like, oh, I just ripped this person off totally?
Well, that's a great question. Yeah, playing not really, but for stage presence, that's what I was all about. I was not really, and I'm still not a good bass player. I was fine, and tight and stuff, but like I wasn't doing like bass lines and stuff. I was just another rhythm guitar player, but I could jump around like the best of them.
That's what you had to do to keep your spot. It's like, well, I'll just be the one who jumps around.
Yeah. Like he's writing the songs. He's the good-looking singer. I'm the guy who jumps around. But you gotta have a thing, But I just liked it too. It felt awesome, Not punk, but the first person I ever saw that I was like, I want to do that. It was the bass player from Pearl Jam, Jeff Ament or Ament. Yeah, on Saturday Night Live, and he was just going crazy and jumping around. So I would like try to emulate that in my house. But then locally, when Humble Beginnings added that guitar player, Jeremy,
Yeah, Jeremy Hernandez.
dude, his stage presence. I know he was guitar, not bass, but I would just watch him, and I was like, I was trying to steal that dude's moves for sure.
I always joke with Jeremy, or I've said this before. He always had like the best style that I always wanted to rip off, but I never could. Almost like we were talking before with the person who wore the sleeve as the headband.
Right.
Like Jeremy was that guy who would just say, "Oh, there's this new thing. I'll try this." I'm like, man, you pull it off so well.
You bastard, yeah.
You son of a bitch.
Was that dude in Bigwig? No.
Yeah.
He was, yeah.
Yeah, he was in Sticker first, and then he was in High Strung, and then he joined Humble, and then he went to Bigwig.
Okay, Humble, then Bigwig. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and then he did Near Miss.
His energy was awesome. I was totally trying to get his moves. He looked great.
I mean, I guess you kind of need that. You know, everyone needs someone to almost like to see. I don't know how to put this.
It's like measure yourself a little bit, you know, not to compete, but you have to like see it, and then you're like, that's what I want to aspire to.
Exactly. It's almost like when people want to start a career, they're like, I really want to do this, but I don't know. And they're like, oh, this is what this person does. And as soon as they open that door, like, oh, wow, I can physically see that this person is doing this thing that I want to do. Now I want to emulate myself off of that until I make it my own. And then you find other people that are doing it. So you're like, oh, I'm going to pick a little piece from that person and this person, just completely rip them off until you kind of, over time, it's like you almost trip into what you personally bring to the table.
That's everything in life. That's even being in a band. When you start in a band, you're like, I want to sound like them. And then hopefully it morphs into your own sound, you know? There's no other way to do it.
Oh, so I'm looking at...
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. No,
you asked about Heath getting in the band. So he was before the split, we started thinking about like Heath was always at my house. He was a friend. He was my brother's friend first, and then like we became friends. And he was the best guitar player I had ever heard in my life.
Oh yeah.
Still, he's like one of the best.
Oh yeah.
Just amazing, right? Like the first time I met him, I remember he was just like my brother's friend from the next town over in Somerville. So we went to his house and we walked up his stairs, and he was like learning this Metallica song, like I think it was like Fade to Black. We're like, hey, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm just trying to learn the solo of Fade to Black. And he played it for us. And I was in 8th grade going into high school, and I was just like, oh my God, you can play like that? He was just amazing. And then like, I don't remember exactly how, but eventually we were like, I know how. Don't Dream It's Over has a solo in it. And like none of us knew how to play it. And Heath's like, I'll figure it out. He was just hanging out with us practice. Figured it out on the spot. And then I don't know if it happened that night, but we're like, dude, you're in our band.
Was he playing in a band prior to that?
He was, yeah. Nothing that ever got, off the ground. But yeah, he was starting to play in bands then.
That, and we'll get into it later because that was the jump off point for him and Tyler to go into Midtown. That little pocket of time right there where he just does that, and you're like, be in our band. So you guys have already done the legwork to be known in the scene. You're going to be on this comp that's going to go on Pinball Records. Then Heath is there just diddling around that you saw years ago just rip. So I don't know, like I always find it's kind of fun for me to just be like how all these things came together, and then later on he goes and does like Midtown, and now they're playing with like My Chemical Romance and shit. It's just weird.
And you could trace it to like a moment.
To that moment where he's just fucking around with that song, and you're like, you should be in our band.
Dude, and I would be lying if I didn't say I dwelled on that moment for years as like Midtown ascended these heights, and I was like, wait a second.
I would totally want to talk about that.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Because I mean that's like a very known thing, is that all the bands that all the four guys came from to then start this band, and then like everybody in those bands or the scene were just like, you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, dude, I felt those feelings.
Okay, so like leading up to that though, you guys, so Heath's in the band, you guys are playing more shows. I remember seeing you guys I think we played with you guys at the church. It was I just said it before. The
Burnersville Church?
Burnersville Church, yeah. So
I thought we played there together, or I was thinking it was that PPAC. You remember the PPAC Gladstone Legion Hall up on that hill? I thought we played with you there, maybe.
Possibly. I think we did play with you there. Because it was that during when was that with the Broadway's Tuesday show?
No, I don't think we played with them. And PPAC was like rustic looking. It was like up on this hill, and it looked like a log cabin, so that would make sense. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. There was that tour, and then with like Broadway's and Tuesday, we played a show there with them, and there was this other band. there was two bands from another tour from Chicago. They weren't as big as Broadways or Tuesdays because both those bands were, just break apart as slapstick. Oh, it starts with like an M. Jesus Christ. It was a three-piece, and the lead singer had like long hair.
And they're from Chicago?
They were from Chicago. Oh, this is gonna drive me fucking crazy, but I think we played that show. Anyway, I was just trying to think of a random show that happened there that could have been one of you guys. But the other place, the Burnersville Church, I remember that was the first time I saw you because I think fucking Senseless played.
Yep, that would make sense.
And then you guys played after them, and then I think we played at some point. But I remember for some reason like I was watching you guys, and then later on when Midtown happened, I was like, oh my God, like those are just two guys from that band that we played with.
Yeah.
Heath just stood out because he was just shredding. And I was like, well, that guy fucking rips.
Yeah. Yeah, he certainly did. Yeah, he's amazing.
That was a very long-winded, no-point story that I just told. So
I liked it. I thought it was great.
Hey man, thanks. It makes me feel good for someone who's published a book. You like my storytelling.
Nice.
So the funny thing, okay, so this is something I definitely have to point out because this would not be a song title that would work today.
Oh yeah.
So I'm looking at the split with you guys and LWL, and the first song from you guys on your side is how could the girl of my dreams be a lesbian?
Dude, it's funny you say that because I was listening to that song the other day and I went, wow, because it's such a funny song too, but in it they actually end up killing her, I think.
Oh Jesus.
Yeah, I think it's a dream sequence, I believe. I'd have to listen again, but I was like, yeah, this could never be made today. But like that became the song that we were like known for around then. That was like our hit back then. So, but I'm like, yeah, that wouldn't work today.
No, I mean that was one of your two songs that was on the pinball comp.
Yes, it was, and it actually helped us because before that we were known as the Heathcliff Band because we did the cover of that Heathcliff cartoon theme song.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in like a punk rock style. That's a hard thing to shed, man. That's tough.
I love that. I love that when bands would do that, or they'd play a song and then in the middle there'd be a stop and they'd break into a song like that, like a cover like that, and then they'd go back into the regular song.
That's the smarter way to do it, is to incorporate it into one of your songs. But yeah, we had that song, and then all anyone would yell is Heathcliff, And I'm like, it's a good idea at first, but then you're like, why did we do this? But we actually did it. It's on the split. This doesn't show up in digital days. At the end of the CD, the Nowhere Fast LWL CD, it's like the hidden track, so it runs for a couple minutes, and then it's us doing Heathcliff, but like Matt and Tyler, and then Steve and Ivan from LWL, they all trade verses.
Was this at the end of Don't Dream It's Over?
Yep. No, I guess LWL came second on that, so it was after their last song.
Oh, so I wonder if it's on their version that's on SoundCloud.
That's a good question, and I'll find out after this episode, I think.
So at this point, you guys are where you're at, where we're talking about, and you said you only played like a show in Connecticut. Did you guys play any of the shows outside of Jersey?
Yeah, I don't think we ever got outside of Jersey besides that. Like, no, definitely no New York City. That wasn't an option. And I don't think we got to Pennsylvania. So I'm pretty sure we just stayed in Jersey. It felt so big at the time, we felt like on top of the world and like, this is so cool. Like we had a little record label and stuff. But like now looking back, I'm like, we didn't even leave the state besides, Connecticut.
Did you guys ever headline a show or get close to headlining a show, get more towards the top of the list?
Never. No, not a big show. We played our own shows, but it wasn't just like local things, but like never at the Palace or anything like that. Our biggest shows were like with Bigwig, and then we played with Catch 22 at that terrifying place in Newark, the Pipeline.
Oh, Pipeline, yeah.
That was a big show. But yeah, we never headlined our own.
What year did you guys break up?
So we broke up before that split even came out, which made Jay Turon very upset, and I see why.
Oh, okay. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so I mean, it was it took a while to come out. Everything feels like it was a while back then, but now it's like probably a couple months. Yeah, we broke up before it even was released, so we didn't even support it. We kind of just like sunk our own ship.
Were you guys, as a four-piece, having a conversation where you wanted to like be a bigger band or like tour, things like that?
No, not really. I was still in high school. So Matt had moved to Ohio. His family moved to Ohio. So he went out there. So the band went on hiatus for a little bit. This is before Heath was in it. He was like stuck out there. He didn't want to be there. So I don't remember how. He got in this program where he graduated early, moved back here, and lived with Tyler because he wanted to do the band.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, it was wild. He really missed Jersey. He just wanted to do this. But like back then, we didn't know anyone who went on tour. That wasn't even an option or anything like that. So we didn't like sit around and talk about it, but we were pretty gung ho on the band, you know? So Matt came back here. Tyler was still in high school and Matt had graduated early and I was like a junior. But having two 17-year-olds live in a house together, it's tough, you know? So they kind of like, I don't know if it was falling out, but they stopped living together. And then Matt came to live in my house. And then the same thing happened with us, too. It's just tough, you know, close quarters with your families and stuff.
I'm also thinking, too, that, I mean, it's not like he was paying rent or anything, right?
Right, yeah. We had some nice parents, you know?
I was going to say, you had two very nice sets of parents that were just like, yes, let's bring this 17-year-old child into our house and pay for all of his shit.
I mean, they knew Matt, so they knew he was an awesome kid. Both sets, like Tyler's and my parents, knew his parents. And I think they must have, like, seen us doing the band and, like, thought, like, wow, that's a really cool outlet. They just believed in it, I guess. I don't know. I'd have to ask them.
It's so bizarre to me.
Yeah, I don't think I would do that.
I don't even like when friends come to visit me, like now.
No, right? Like a sleepover too? Like, ugh.
Yeah, I'm like, you get a hotel.
Yeah.
You're not staying in my apartment, all right?
Well, you could see why it didn't work out. You know, and we're young and stuff, so yeah, so it didn't. But then, like, I mean, so then when Matt was back, we were like, we're doing the band. But again, we weren't talking about touring. We didn't have a van or anything like that. We were just like, let's play shows. Let's do this Pinball Records stuff. This is going to be awesome, you know. And then Heath joined the band, and then that was it.
Well, how long after Heath joined the band did they leave to do Midtown?
So I feel like he mentioned it on your show, and he said a couple months. To me, it felt like a long time. He had made it sound like it was only like 6 or 7 months he was in the band, something like that. And I would believe him. He's got a great memory, so that makes sense. But the irony of this whole thing, I remember being in the studio for the songs on the split with LWL. Tyler was graduating high school. I was still a junior. And he kind of made this new set of friends, these kind of like jock kids in his school in Bridgewater. And we were like, what's he doing hanging out with these kids? You know, he's not taking the band seriously. You know, I remember he had done, what's that thing when you graduate and everyone in the school like sleeps over there? Do you remember what that is? Project graduation? Okay, so he did that. We were in the studio and he like was not showing up. And we're like, what the hell? He's not taking this seriously. We were like, Matt, why don't you just sing the parts? Like, cause you know, he sang backups on a lot of stuff too. And finally Tyler showed up and like, and we recorded him. But that we started to like fizzle out. I remember me and Matt just being like, listen, he's not taking it seriously. Let's go start our own thing and like do this for real. And then the whole irony is then they formed Midtown, went and became a worldwide touring band. You know, we did not. So funny looking back now.
So you guys had already broken up, and then the band was dispersed, so they didn't have anything to do but college, and then they did Midtown. So they didn't leave you guys. I know Heath had mentioned this, and this was fucking 4 years ago now when I actually talked to him. And I don't really want to go back and listen to old episodes because I feel like I would just cringe about how I interview people. So they were already out of the band. The band had broken up because you guys broke the band up?
Yeah, I guess. We wanted to take it seriously, and we didn't think, not Heath, and I love Tyler too. Me and Tyler are friends, you know, it's all water under the bridge. But yeah, we just didn't think Tyler was taking it seriously. I mean, we wanted to like go for it and then be careful what you wish for, I guess.
So that's why it broke up, and then that was you guys are recording in Portrait.
Yeah, we finished the recording. I think that was just like the seed that got planted. So we finished recording, we kept playing shows, and then the CD was like being processed, hadn't even come out yet, and we were like, you know what, we got to play our last show. And everyone agreed. I don't remember there being an argument from Tyler or Heath. So I think everyone, I guess, we're all just kind of growing apart, you know?
So you guys decided as a band to break up, and you were going to have a final show.
Yeah. Or no, I think it was at the Palace. I remember playing the show, after the show, all talking and be like, you know, we all got to break up, and no one argued. So like we didn't play like a ceremonial last show. That was it. We broke up after a show.
Oh. Who broke the news to Jay?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe Heath, because he was like the nicest guy, you know, so maybe we asked him to do it.
Because you said he was mad or like bummed out or whatever because he was
probably
putting this
and
out.
Deservedly so. He put all that money into it and stuff, and we're like, yeah, we're breaking up. And I think LWL was like, what the hell, you know, that we were gonna play shows and stuff. And
I feel like this was probably one of the reasons why Jay doesn't want to talk because he probably just had so many deals just go to fucking shit.
He still doesn't want to talk. I would love to hear him on here.
I've bothered him. I'll do kind of an annual or 6-month message on Instagram. I'll be like, hey man, you ready yet? And he just stopped. He started like he replied a couple of years ago, and he's like, can't we just like get together and talk over beers without getting recorded? I was like, no.
I mean, he was like the glue of like a lot of this scene.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, he should. And he's funny, like just Rob Muscatello. He's funny and personable and stuff too. It'd be awesome.
I know. There's something in the water down there. Like, I feel like everyone from that southern Jersey or central Jersey area is just like hilarious who I've talked to.
Tyler too. If you could ever talk to Tyler, he might be one of the funniest people I've ever met.
That's what everybody keeps telling me, which
yeah.
is so funny because and I've said this before, like I'm sure he's great, and I think it could be a great conversation. I think I've already done the Midtown thing twice.
Right.
And like talking to Heath, he gave me like good background. Rob was like the most popular, I think it still is. It's the most downloaded episode.
Really? I didn't hear that one. That's interesting. I got to try that.
Well, he promoted the fuck out of it. He posted on the Midtown page. He posted on their Twitter. Like he like went nuts promoting it and just like, but it's still like a lot of people still listen to it because it's really good discussion. The Midtown thing's been covered. I mean, that's really it. I mean, so I don't really know what I would talk to him about. Like, it was just for the fact that he's funny.
Well, he can come on and like fix all the mistakes I'm making with like my memory of Nowhere Fast and stuff. But yeah, I mean, he's one of the most funny. He's just that guy where you sit down with him and you're like, this guy's cool. Like you couldn't not like him. He's funny and like charming and stuff. He's like the ultimate front man too, because he has like that gift of gab. So his banter in between songs was just awesome, and he's got a cool voice. So that's why, I mean, I was bitter towards Midtown too, but I was always like, why isn't Tyler the singer? You know, I could never understand that, but I mean, I do. I get it. But.
Well, didn't he do the majority, didn't he do the majority of the songs on the EP? I just remember his voice being more.
On the EP, maybe, but I just remember as they were getting bigger and bigger, I'm like, wait, Gabe is the lead singer? That's kind of like, that's weird, because Tyler had such a cool voice.
They were so different. All three of them had such distinct voices. I liked Heath's the best. Heath has my favorite voice.
Heath has a great voice. Yeah, man. But Tyler, I thought Tyler's was awesome. I just like his voice. But yeah.
Tyler had kind of like the chilled out, like, I'm kind of singing like this, you know? Like,
that's the best. Yeah.
Gabe had a lisp, basically. He did. And humble. He had a fucking
Gabe
lisp.
sounded so young. He had like that quintessential pop punk voice, you know? And I just.
Gabe did not have the best voice. I mean, in humble beginnings, he did not. It was very distinct. But then when he was in Midtown, I think he might have gotten voice lessons because it started to get better. And it worked for that first record. And I never really listened to the ones after the first one. But when Heath came in the chorus of Just Rock and Roll, whatever, I was like, holy shit, this guy's got fucking pipes.
Yeah, he could sing.
To that point, their CD comes out, or like the EP or the full length, which is the one where you looked at it and you were like, fuck.
I think it was even before that. So it was like, all right, so then I became a senior in high school, right? Me and Matt had our other band. We started this band called Carousel Kid, which is a terrible name, but it was a pretty good band. So I remember this distinctly. This used to haunt me. I don't know if we were playing shows yet, but we had all these songs, and I was like, listen, we need to make these shirts. They need to be like those baseball tees, you know, the 3/4 sleeve one? Because it was hard to get merch back then, right? Like Nowhere Fast had like maybe 2 t-shirts or something and some stickers that Jay made. But I was like, we need to get these. And I swear it was like that week, I see a girl walking down the hallway in my school, and she's wearing a baseball tee, and it was a Midtown shirt. And I was just like, oh my God. Like it like took my heart, ripped it out, and like stomped on it on the floor. And I was like, what? And from then it like snowballed. I was dating this girl, and she's like, oh, I'm going to this show in New York. I think it was Get Up Kids. And this is when I loved Get Up Kids, their first album. And she's like, yeah, Midtown is playing for them. I'm like, I'm not going to that show. And it was just like, dude, it was like snowballing. I was like, what is happening? It was rough. And thinking about it, being a senior in high school and just like it was horrible.
Oh, totally. I fucking hated them for them being so successful. I was so mad. I was so jealous.
I heard Steve LWL's episode on your podcast when he said it on the episode. He had like a dartboard with, what was it? Like their CD or like a photocopied thing of their CD or something?
I thought it was either, I'll have to listen to it again, but it's either a Midtown poster or it was like Heath's face.
I hope it wasn't Heath's face, because Heath is like the nicest guy. But it was like when I heard that, it actually made me feel a lot better. Because, like, I mean, I wasn't bitter at this point. Your episode came out a couple years ago. Like, I've gotten over it. But I'm like, thank God I wasn't the only one feeling this stuff. You know, like back then I was like, oh, my God. They were on that MTV show. I was like, they're doing everything I want to do, you know?
Well, it was wild because Gabe is on the Toby from H2O's podcast like last week. And it's really cool to listen to it.
I just heard it. I'm a big fan of that show, too.
I can't listen to a lot of these same like the punk interview podcasts because I just from doing it, like I get the joy out of doing these interviews, and I have to edit these things for so long. So by the time I do that, I really don't want to listen to like some other band talking about the same shit. Like,
Right. Yeah, I can see that.
I'm just fucking over it. It'd be like if I was a sushi chef, I probably wouldn't want to go out and eat sushi afterwards or some other restaurant.
Yeah.
But I would listen to that because if there's someone though being interviewed that is from that I know of or like their band or something like that, I will put the time into it. And I'd like that too because he's talking about humble beginnings, and it's so funny too because he's like when he's talking about Josh, anyone from the Jersey scene knows he's talking about Josh, but he's like that dude, and he wouldn't even say his name. I know, like I don't think it was intentional, but it was just so funny to hear him saying he's like, oh yeah, and they kicked me out.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, because you were a pain in the fucking ass. They kicked you out.
It was interesting to hear that he was hurt. I think he still is hurt, it seemed like. And I'm like, wow, like I listened because it was Gabe and because he's such a, I don't know if he's a polarizing figure, but he's definitely like a love him or hate him guy. He's not just like, that guy.
I think it's both, man. He's definitely a polarizing thing. I mean, that's why around the time, like where you're talking about where they went off and did Midtown from from another perspective, and I don't know if I talked about this before, but we went to a show. I think I have talked about this. We went to a show in Allendale. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It wasn't Allendale. It was Lyndhurst. We went to Lyndhurst, and we're outside and we're talking to Gabe because we were friends with Gabe, and he used to hang out with us all the time. And then he did the Midtown thing, and I think he was sitting there wearing like a turtleneck or some shit. And I was like, what is up with this guy?
Yeah, the turtleneck.
And he had like a, what are those Navy jacket? Not the...
Yeah, peacoat.
He had a peacoat on or some shit. And I'm like, what is Mr. Gap over here?
Mr.
I remember we were outside, and it was me and Heiner, who was in Lanemeyer, and then he was in Humble Beginnings. Rob just like went off on Gabe. We were just like, holy shit. We just like had this like yelling fight with him. Just like,
now, for what reason? Because of the peacoat?
We were like, what the fuck is this fashion? No, we were like,
that'd be amazing.
No, we were mad at him because we felt that he just stopped being friends with us.
Really?
Yeah, we were just like, what the fuck, dude?
Now let me ask you this, because I had a thing with Lanemeyer. I thought, did you guys bring Midtown on their first tour? Did someone in your band like book that tour or something?
No, we didn't bring them on tour. I mean, they were already like blowing us out of the water with tours. I think Sean helped with a couple of their shows or something.
Because back then I don't know, you hear things through the grapevine and stuff. So I had heard like it was either Lanemeyer took them out on their first tour or the dude from Lanemeyer booked their first tour. So I was like, I hate Lanemeyer too. Sorry. So now I don't anymore.
That's so fucking funny.
No, I did for a while, but like, yeah, man, I was like, wait, they're touring? They have a band? Like, they were doing things. Like, I was like, how are they doing this stuff? We were in a band with them 6 months ago. What book did they read? And how can I do this? But like they had Gabe, love him or hate him, he had that drive, man. And he had that business thing that I still don't have.
I mean, that's the thing, man. It's kind of, that's what I'm talking about in the beginning of the interview. It's where we all have this thing, if we're kind of going after it. It's like a North Star, and some people fall off because they just get jaded and just don't. They have too many losses than wins, and they just stop. Like, whatever, I'm just gonna work a 9 to 5 and just be bitter. But there's other people that have that thing, and they see it early on, and they just take it all the way. Like he did that, where even now he's got a record label and he manages bands and things, and he makes a career off of it. And you just put a book out. You having that published is like having your full length out.
Yeah, I can. That's awesome, man. And you know what? I never, in all the bands I was in, I never had a full length out, and I was never on vinyl. So that was always like a really big hole. It felt like a failure. The dream was to be in a band and do that stuff. And I'm like, man, I had a split CD. You know what I mean? And like demos and stuff. So like to never have that full length. So I guess, yeah, you saying that, it makes it feel pretty good.
I mean, that's how I see it. I think metaphorically, it is that feeling that you wanted to get. I mean, I don't even know how many people in the scene besides Aaron Carnes, like who did the In Defense of Ska book, who have a published fucking book, man. Like that's a huge feat.
Thanks, man. I mean, it's not like, I'm not gonna crap on myself. It's not like whoever Simon Schuster and stuff in the front of every Barnes and Noble, but yeah, it's published, so it feels kind of good.
Yeah, and it's about music, or like there's a music theme to it, and you talk about Green Day a lot in this interview, and the book's called Nimrod, and it's about a kid and then Green Day is like the villain basically. It's like it's an interesting thing that it's you got into music because of that band, and then the fucking book is named after their fourth album.
Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth album, yeah.
I don't know. I just pick apart things and think of how kind of comes full circle if you just keep going with it.
Yeah, it did come full circle. You're right. And yeah, it's cool, they're the band that changed everything for me. So like to be in my first book is kind of awesome. And I'd love to get the word to them. So if anyone knows Green Day, tell them.
What was the band you said you and Matt did after Nowhere Fast?
So me and Matt did that band Carousel Kid. I thought was a good band, but we didn't really do anything. We played like local shows and stuff. But then we did Merciana, which was kind of our next band and the one that I thought was going to kind of like do something, like make some waves.
When did you guys make that, or when did you guys start that band?
Merciana was 2002.
Let It Begin? Is that one of your albums?
Yep, that was it, yeah.
Who else is in this band? Why does this name sound so familiar?
Let's see, that was Matt, myself, a guy named Chris Walsh played drums. And originally, James Taptinos, who's like, everyone knows that guy, he was in it. And then it was like, we had a couple other guitar players. We landed with Sean Reams. He's from Up By You. He's from West Milford. He owns North Jersey Guitar. It's a cool guitar shop. And he was in, I forget the name of his band. Yeah, I don't remember right now. That's terrible.
I know I've heard Merciana before. I feel like I've heard that in an interview that I've done.
So we got like a little, and I emphasize little, we got a little buzz like in the beginning, and we got a manager like really quick. And the manager was Ben Weinman from Dillinger Escape Plan.
Holy shit.
Yeah, he knew James and he came to a practice and they were starting like a management team or firm or whatever you call it. So they managed us, which I guess it was good and bad, because we kind of were like feeling ourselves a little bit because it was like a couple practices and then we're like, we got a manager, and it's Ben, like Dillinger. Yeah. That was awesome. Especially me, a hardcore kid. I'm like, that dude? And he was like the best dude. So he got us like really good shows. He got us really good opportunities. And then we had like a quick thing with a guy from Island Records, this producer. So that like almost happened. The band was kind of like a lot of almost.
How long were you guys a band?
Probably only almost 3 years.
So from 2002 to 2005?
Yeah. And that producer, I forget how we met this producer, but it was Lou Giordano who had done one of the Sunny Day Real Estate records. And we were like, oh, this is cool,
Whoa.
And eventually, like, he offered us like this production deal where we wouldn't be on Island. I think he was like had a contract with Island Records or something. So we weren't signed to Island, but Lou wanted to sign us on a production deal. He would produce it and then he would try to sell it and all that kind of stuff. We were advised not to do it. Like he was asking for a big percentage. So like we turned him down and then he turned around and did the Taking Back Sunday record that like blew up. And we were like, you got to be kidding me.
No way.
Yeah. The first Midtown, then that. Oh, and he also did that Atari's record that was like, they had that huge cover, that Don Henley cover, Boys of Summer.
Yeah, that was one where fucking John from Beefcake joined the band. He joined it, and then later on then the album after that, they did that really emo one that sounded like My Bloody Valentine or something.
Was he in it for that cover? Because that record blew up.
Yeah, so John, I think he joined. I don't know if he recorded on that album. I totally forget. He might have. I have to go back and listen to that. But he definitely played on the one after because he helped. I remember I was like, what happened? I was like, why did they change their sound to that really emo sounding thing? He's like, oh, I was a big part of writing that record. I was like, do tell.
I really like that one.
I was like, was that one that was all emo and like weird and shit?
That's so something I would say. That's amazing. Good for you.
I was like, yeah, I'll put my foot in my mouth and own it.
Yeah, Yeah, so we turned him down, and then that was, dude, and then we got an inquiry from Fueled by Ramen, which was, at the time, I don't know if he still does it, but it was Vinny from Less Than Jake. Our friend Mike Ski from the AKAs, he like, the guy, they were on Fueled by Ramen, and Vinny was like, hey, do you know any bands? I'm looking to sign some bands. And he's like, yeah, there's this band we just played with, Merciana, check them out. So they reached out to us, and like, we didn't know any better. We weren't trying to be like, cool. We're like, we sent the email right to Ben and Tom, our other manager. They responded, and then we never heard back. Fueled by Ramen's like, I'm not dealing with a manager of this band no one knows, I just want a band. And we were like, man, yeah, there's some bad karma out there.
I could feel for you, man. I definitely, there's personal things where I've done it, and you see where you're kind of on a path and it ends harsh, and then someone does something similar, or there's some kind of parallel to you and them, and they just like go right past you, and you're like, son of a bitch.
Totally. And it's hard not to be bitter. You don't want to be that bitter dude, but like you see, like, I remember seeing Midtown, I was like watching the Real World Road Rules Challenge, and like they're playing the theme song on the beach, and I'm like, are you kidding me? I was like what did I do to the universe that it's like crapping all over me?
The universe was like, we're going to give you a lot of info to write this angsty book.
Yeah, exactly. This will all be great later. And it's funny, before I wrote this novel, Nimrod, I was working on kind of like a sitcom. I wasn't trying to shop it to like NBC. I was just trying to write, learning how to write. And it was about, and I'm going to write this one day, so I'm not going to give it all away, but it was about this guy who spends 10 years of his life touring. So it's not really me, but it's fictionalized. He quits or gets kicked out of the band, depending on who you ask. And then he has to like acclimate to normal life at 30. And then the band goes on to become bigger and bigger and bigger, like throughout the story. It's a fictionalized version.
Yeah, I mean, but even as you're saying that, like I kind of felt it.
Right? You can feel it.
There's something about constantly trying to go after something and it just doesn't take off. I got very involved in the entrepreneur life and working for myself years ago. So I kind of surrounded myself with listening to interviews with entrepreneurs who have these $1 million, or they're worth like millions of dollars. So they just they're really successful and they live the life they want. And after a while listening to them, you realize a lot of them are actually like really fucking depressed. They always say the same thing. They're like, once you get the thing, they're like, it's never the way you think it's going to be. And I've listened to so many people saying that I really took the pressure off myself and just been like, you know what, man, I'm just going to kind of be cool with shit. I don't want to be lazy and not do anything, but I'm going to give myself a little bit of a break because I think I'd rather work hard at just being where I am now and being like, I'm cool with this. Like, this is great. And I should learn how to this be so great instead of saying like, I need to sell out arenas and shit, which I haven't had that want in 20 years. Like, I could give a fuck. Yeah, there's always that thing where you're just like, man, I just can't get that fucking win.
With like the Midtown stuff, like it was tough, but like I need to say now, like those guys are awesome. Like Tyler and Heath, such nice guys. Like I'm not bitter towards those guys.
Oh, totally. I mean, and Rob.
Yeah, Rob I didn't know, but I hear he's a great guy.
He's so fucking great. He is seriously like the nicest fucking person. I can't say any like enough good things about him, which makes me so mad. We joke about it all the time, and he's even done interviews lately where he'll talk about the Midtown Lane Meyer beef and all this stuff, and he goes, it sucks. I'd be best friends with these guys. Because when we talked in his interview, he's like, man, like we would have gotten along so well. I'm like, I know, I'm so mad at myself for not liking you back then.
We wasted all these years.
Yeah. I mean, it's like kind of going back to the Tyler thing. I'm gonna wrap this up, but the bummer thing for me is like my only encounter with him was when I was apologizing to Midtown at their Orlando show, and I was apologizing to him, and he was just kind of giving me shit for it, and I was like, "Fuck this guy."
Wait, so there was actually I kind of probably jumped in. There was actually a Lane Meyer and Midtown beef.
Oh, 100%. I mean, it was like kind of not known. Like they found out about we were talking so much shit about them on the road.
That's awesome.
And then they started saying fuck like they didn't like us, but even though like it was funny because we'd be listening to their CD in our van and they'd be listening to our CD in their van. Which is just so hilarious. I would be the one driving early morning or something, and Sean would be, because you couldn't listen to that CD around Sean. He was just so fucking bitter. It was like 8 a.m. or some crap like that, and I put the CD in because everyone was passed out, and I'm listening to it. I was like, God damn, this is so fucking good. This is so good. And I was so mad at them, and we were talking so much shit, but I was listening to Save the World, Lose the Girl.
So that's actually a really mature thing of you, to be able to like recognize that something is good even though you don't like the people. I think if I don't like the people, I'd like write it off. I can find a way to be like, this sucks. That's cool that you can.
But it makes it worse because you're like, fuck, I see why people like them. Damn it. But if Tyler does listen to this, I'm sure he's super great. That was my my only interaction with him was just where I walked up. I was like, fuck that guy.
It sucks when that happens and then everyone else is telling you like, Tyler's such a great guy. And you're like, I'm sure he is, but like, yeah, he actually is. He could have been a stand-up comedian. That's how funny that is.
That's what everybody says about him, I totally appreciate it. Well, cool, man. So before I ask the last two questions, I started asking this. I think if you've been listening, you probably heard. Is there any story that you've ever wanted to tell that you could tell now?
No, not really. But it was good to like tell the story about like kind of being bitter towards Midtown success. I probably held that in for a while, so to say it feels good. A
little cathartic.
Yeah, cathartic. No crazy tour stories. My bands never went on tour. I went with like Dillinger took me on tour once, and then I went with the AKAs once playing bass for them. But like none of my bands got out to tour.
Wait, Dillinger took you on tour as what?
Dillinger needed a light person because they used to have these insane light shows. Yeah, they were crazy. So I flew out. It was like mid-tour. That's how those guys rolled. They just called and needed someone. And I was like working for a landscaper, and I was like, F this, I'm going on tour. So I left the next day, and like I had to learn this crazy light show. They had this computer, and it was just awesome. It was wild. I mean, my first experience on tour, I was in a tour bus with those guys.
Okay, this sounds like an amazing story altogether. I mean,
Okay.
the story doesn't have to be about your own band. It could be about something like that. This is incredible. So this is what, 2000?
It's before I met my wife, so it's probably Merciana was like still going but fizzling. So I'd say 2004. They had just put out that record Miss Machine, which is such a good record.
Yeah.
And they were touring with Every Time I Die, Zayo, and Misery Signals. So it was wild. I like showed up in Nebraska. I like knocked literally on a tour bus door because it was 11 a.m. and just hopped on the tour. It was wild, like to see that band who freaked out like no one else, to see how they function and stuff. It was wild.
Aren't they like pretty chill behind the scenes?
So chill.
But Greg was a little bit more partier.
Well, not when I was on tour with them. The bass player smoked a lot of weed. He was awesome. What a cool guy. None of the rest of them partied. I don't think they were straight edge except for Ben, but like they weren't partying. And I was like blown away by that. I guess I was naive. I was like, they're playing this crazy music. They're freaking out. They have to be getting messed up all the time. And they just weren't. They were just chill, nice, fun dudes. And it was crazy to see that transformation. I don't know how they got on stage every night and like did that to their bodies and like continue to do it. Like I was with them for I think 24 shows and they did it every night. And then the tour was over in New York and I went home and they flew right to Europe and just kept doing it. And I was like, I don't know how they do this. It was amazing.
To that point, and then I want to ask you how the fuck you got the light show thing. Ben legit posted today. He goes, there's this video of him like kind of jumping in the crowd and he's just like holding his guitar up in the air. And he goes, if I remember correctly, this was 6 months before I was advised to be physical. After getting rotator cuff surgery, repairing 94% of the tissue holding my arm in, and being told I need neck surgery. As an almost 47-year-old man with children who I now value. A lot of spelling mistakes here. I now value more than just being in the Dillinger Scape crazy guy. I often think I would have done things differently knowing how difficult things would be. He's basically doing this post saying, here's a video of me going apeshit in Dillinger, and I have all of these problems, and I think I probably should have chilled the fuck out because
Dude,
I have so much physical pain now.
It's totally believable because he would come off the stage like bleeding and stuff. He went 100% every night. It was insane to see. And he's still playing like the craziest stuff you've ever heard too. Like anyone can freak out, but he's playing crazy stuff.
Yeah, I don't understand how that happened.
He was on the show, right? I heard his episode.
Yeah.
He's like legitimately like the nicest dude in the scene. Like he couldn't be nicer and like make you feel, and then you see him on stage and you're like, he's like an animal.
I think that's the release though. It's that.
I think so too.
That has to be. It's almost like I always joke that hardcore kids would get up and just play pissed off music because they wanted to drink so bad.
Oh yeah, that's great. Yeah.
So, like but they got that release in that 30 minutes, which would just sustain probably until the next night.
Well, it's funny because hardcore started like in New York, and they were like street kids, like legitimate Cro-Mags, and those dudes, they were no joke. And then when I got into hardcore, I was like a suburban like punk rock kid with no problems, no anger, and I'm like, these are two different worlds. There was like a danger to their hardcore, but not to like ours.
It was safe for ours, but we had angst, and we needed to be a part of something that was angsty.
Yes, exactly.
And so we just chose whatever that was going to be. Before I close it out, like, why would they choose you for doing lights? Was that something you were doing?
No, not at all. They needed someone. I guess their light guy could only do half the tour, and Ben was managing Merciana at the time, and he just knew I was like a little scene dude who like desperately wanted to get on tour.
But that's a giant responsibility for someone who doesn't know how to work lights.
Well, they had no one else. They had no other option at the time. I got out there. I mean, I was musical, because I played, so I could, but their timings are insane. I would like study at night, and like just like listen to their songs. But yeah, I got out there, and their guitar player had an injury, of course. So they had a backup. So their guitar player stayed with me for 2 shows and like showed me how to do it. And then like I took over. And talk about being scared for that Nowhere Fast show, that first one. I was so scared to do the lights for Dillinger.
That's so fucking cool.
Yeah, it was so awesome. And like it feels lame, but like if someone's like, "Oh, would you go on tour?" Like if they don't know Dillinger, I'd be like, "Yeah, if the light guy." It feels like lame, but if you know Dillinger, I'm like, those lights were awesome. Not because they were awesome.
That's like part of the fucking show, man.
Yeah, it was wild. And they would come back to me, and they were so nice. The singer's like, "Dude, awesome job." They were always so nice. He's like, "But don't shine that one right in my eye at this time." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And I would like write it down. It's awesome.
Do they play the same set every night, or do they change it up?
They did play the same set. Yep. They changed it up on me once during the last show, and I was like, I don't know what to do. So I just winged it and wung it. But yeah, they were playing the same set. They would have to with that kind of music. But it was awesome, and they were big shows, and I was seeing like these clubs I'd only like heard about and stuff. Yeah, it was cool.
That's awesome, dude. I'm jealous of that. Just to have that experience and see that. That's so dope. Fucking A, man. Let's wrap this up. Before I ask the last question, what would you like to plug? It could be about you, it could be about a friend, it could be about both.
Oh, geez, now I feel bad because it's not going to be about a friend.
Yeah, fuck them. Fuck your friends.
Well, the Midtown reunion show, well, that's already sold out, so they don't need my plug. But that's crazy. They sold out 2 nights, so good for them.
It's very big of you.
There you go. See, it's my penance.
Yeah, exactly.
So now the friends are out of the way. So I want to plug my book, Nimrod, the novel. It's out everywhere now, so you can find it on the90sguy.com. And yeah, please read it. Let me know what you think.
I looked up Nimrod book earlier, and like a bunch of different things came up.
Okay. If you type in Nimrod Ryan Roberts, it pops up.
Nimrod what?
Ryan Roberts, my name.
Oh, I think it said Y and Roberts. I was like, what does that have to do with anything?
I speak like Ryan Roberts.
Y and Roberts.
Elmer Fudd. Yeah, Nimrod Ryan Roberts. Yeah, and it's kind of, I mean, it's like making the rounds. It's very indie and stuff. I thought it'd be awesome if like it could get in front of like Green Day or something. Like, how cool would that be?
Yeah, man, you never know. I mean,
never know.
That may be your next crazy thing that happens to you besides doing Lights for Dillinger.
Like if 14-year-old me like had a book and handed it to Green, like knowing that years later, I'd be like, my life's complete. I'm good.
All right, man. Last question. What scene ethics do you hold on to this day?
All right. I love that you asked that question. For me, I don't want to be too long-winded because I like all of them. I learned all of my ethics through 90s hardcore, basically, from like animal rights and being vegan to like DIY, all that stuff. And I guess the biggest thing, and it's kind of like what you said with your that you own your own business and you're your own boss. That's what I got out of hardcore and punk. It's all, all the same thing, is to just do it yourself, because I own my own business. I own a dog walking service. Without hardcore and just being like teaching me, like if someone else isn't going to do it for you, just do it. Everyone's on the same playing field here. You could do it. It's just the DIY thing, I started my own business. I wrote a book just because of hardcore. Like that dude's on the stage, then he gets off stage and he's like hanging out with me.
All right, real quick, this is going to be at the end. What's the name of your dog walking business for the Jersey folks?
DogdaysNJ.com.
And where are you located at for that?
So we do Keyport, Matawan, Aberdeen, and Hazlitt.